Hey, I've been doing a lot of these videos about Christianity and Christ and all of that, and I need to explain to you what exactly is God. Because I really don't want you to think that I'm going against a divine figure of any kind, because the opposite is true. I'm actually attempting to help you see the actual divine. So we're going to do the doodles because it's easier. So first we have to get the terminology. There's source, which is the new way of calling God, because the word God has been completely screwed over by religions. And then the word religion is actually reinstatement into legions. Basically the Roman legions, the fallen angel legions, whatever you want to call it. It's a re-legioning, okay? We don't want that. You want to lead yourself and you want to go with the original source of creation. Now, God, okay, when most people say God, they mean the all, the mind, the source of everything, everywhere. All that is, was, and ever will be, okay? The Gnostics call it the originator. There's more than 10,000 different names for it. And if you can name it, then it's not God. Because when you name something, you put it into a box. And when you put it into a box, it has limitations. God has no limitations, okay? Now, those people that say God is jealous and this and that and whatever, God is none of those things. Source is none of those things. And for the sake of this video, I'm going to call what I actually know God to be, we're going to call it source, okay? It's easier. God, Thor is called a god, okay? I mean, come on. God, from the Bible and all these other stories, and the Bible itself is actually the book of Baal, which is a demon from the underworld. By Baal, okay? The actual scriptures, the holy books and everything else exist in your DNA. The Old Testament or the New Testament, I don't remember which one it is. It's basically a codex for your DNA and how to manifest. We're going to get into that at some other time. But when you're worshiping God, when you're worshiping anything, you're basically sending energy to this being. Because this source of everything doesn't want your worship. It doesn't want anything from you. It is incapable of wanting. This is basically the force, the source of everything, the energy of everything ever, anywhere, anytime, any place. It has no emotional capacity. It is everything and it is pure neutral. This being is known as male, a father, has genitals, gets mad, gets jealous, is bipolar, is schizo, and is associated with volcanoes. Also, it is a being that worked with Elohim, which is a legion of light beings that vibrate at near the 12th dimension, from the 9th to the 12th frequency planes, dimensions, whatever you want to call it, in this matrix. And this being, the demiurge, was also working with these beings call them whatever you want, and there was conflict with these two, which is why this being, Yahweh, whatever you want to call it, was seeming so off balance, because it wasn't all its fault. It was also instigated by these beings. Now, these beings aren't all bad either, because good or bad is a human judgment. These beings are far beyond what you perceive as good or bad or malevolent or benevolent. They are closest to source than you can be, like right now in this reality, or kind of, sort of. This energy source is available to everything, everywhere. It is in everything, including this pen, including your body. The voice you hear from me is this voice. The thing you're looking at, the computer, is made out of this. Your heartbeat, your blood, everything else is from this. This being doesn't have this ability. This being and these beings manipulate genetics and are confined to frequencies, dimensions, planes, and the matrix. They cannot go outside the matrix because they don't exist outside the matrix. They exist solely within the matrix as constructs of your consciousness to replicate source within the matrix. This is basically a metaphor of your subconscious version of your father, and this is the subconscious version of the angels, archangels, and whatever else you want to call the enlightened beings. And the mother version is missing, if you haven't noticed. That's why Mother Mary comes into play in the female versions of, the mother figure. But they're all subservient to this being, because this was all a ploy by your own subconscious to get you to be off balance so that you can find your neutral setting again. Comprende? Source itself is both masculine and feminine. It is not breasts and penises or vaginas or whatever. It is a masculine and feminine functionality. I think this is considered feminine because it does things. This is, I think, considered masculine because you do things with it. You have to do something with it. The other one does things on its own. You just click it and it does it. Whatever, like flowers are considered masculine, whereas just go figure it out. It's all over the internet for you. This being is neutral because it's not a being, it's everything. This being is known as good or bad, malevolent or benevolent. It is known as male or female. It is known as this or that, polarity, duality, paradoxes, demiurge, matrix. The real thing. Not the real thing. The real thing. So when you're praying to Source, when you're praying to God, when you're sending prayers, what you're doing is asking this entity to do it for you, when this energy source is already within you so that you can do it yourself. So when you're praying for people, the way to do it is to imagine those people already having what it is you're praying for. So if someone's sick and you're like, I'm sending you prayers and love, then you imagine them whole, healed, and healthy. And you say to yourself, Source within me, I intend that these people are benefiting from this with the highest intent and the greatest good of all, for the benefit of all. In divine law and divine free will and all of that, blah, blah, blah. When you're praying to this dude, you're like, Dear God, please save this person. Please do this. Please do that. Please do this. Here's all my power. Go ahead. And then these beings drain that power to them, do all sorts of things while they go about their business taking over galaxies, while this energy source is what they also utilize. So everything is like being fed into these goons. And no offense intended, but it's basically what it is. So this source force, right? When in the Bible, the person known as Christ and the whole concept of Christed, they're all like, oh, it's a Christed being, it's enlightened, it's this and that. First of all, no. That word has been messed up in past history as well. Christed means anointed. It was a title given to kings. Kings were also male and female. It was not a, specific male thing. That's where things get confusing throughout history, especially when wars happen and then the conqueror erases the history of the people and then claims that it's theirs. When people are exhibiting true power like this, like the stories of Jesus Christ in the Bible, they are using this energy. They're not praying to this. They're utilizing this and basically doing things with it. The whole thing about forgive them for they know not what they do, it's to himself, to the consciousness, to the stream of energy, to the balance kept. This person, if someone's praying to this, to forgive other people, this person, this being, should not be asked to forgive. It should be innately forgiven and forgiving because it is the source of everything, correct? If you're having to pray to this, it means you're basically asking your parent to forgive someone. This is not your parent. This is an entity. It's an alien. It's a being. It's a form of consciousness. When you pray to Father God, you're praying to your mind. The mind that creates the will of God. You are God. You have that will power to manipulate source energy into what it is you desire and intend. You are already Christed because you have this energy flowing through you. This is what all of those ascended people and enlightened people have been trying to teach you people for a long time. This being exists solely due to the imbalance of masculine and feminine energy within you. This being is the balance of masculine and feminine energy within you because it is you yourself. It doesn't have head or feet or arms. It does not have a thought pattern. It doesn't have beliefs. It doesn't have emotions. It doesn't think. It doesn't, daydream. This is pure everything. This thing thinks, feels, breathes, pees, poops, yells, fights, starts wars, instigates, causes trouble, loves, forgives, unconditionally gives things, unconditionally takes away things, tests you, punishes you, exiles you, banishes you, isolates you, allows entities to possess you so that it can depossess them, so that it can get credit, so on and so forth. This thing waits for you to utilize it into what it is you desire to do. It is pure, neutral power, the source of all creation. The reason why you exist is because this exists. You will still exist without this, but this cannot exist without this. So while you're in this matrix, these beings make you think that this doesn't exist and it's just woo-woo magic, while they utilize this through you, the being that connects to this energy source, and they drain this by making you think that this doesn't exist, so that you become the battery source to them because they refuse to connect to this, because if they connect to this, then these beings must become neutral. Which they don't want to do because these beings want. They desire. They cannot create with this power without you utilizing it first. So when you're sitting there manifesting something through source energy and the law of attraction, these beings can divert that to them while you think that something's like, oh, you can't manifest, you can't do this, you can't do that, when you actually can, and it's being siphoned to them because they refuse to connect to this. Because they function off of fear. Even at the 12th dimension, whatever dimension, it's still fear energy. It's just an evolved and enlightened form of fear energy. That's basically what it is. So in the storybooks, when Mr. Jesus and Miss Mary, and we talked about their names and titles in other videos, when he's doing all the magic stuff, he's utilizing source energy. When she's being known as Sophia of Christ and the goddess of wisdom and all of this, she is actually him from here, utilizing that energy into herself. Because these two beings are the same being. Okay? The person who was known as this, so when they show that there's two of them, you know, the male and the female. Let's put a little ponytail on this one because she's Mary, and this one's Jeebus, so let's put a little, you know, not a crown of thorns, but an actual crown because he was cool and awesome. So when these two are known as like two separate people, they're not. She was both of these beings, and this one was her muggle husband. We're just gonna call him a muggle, okay? She was the Aeon, he was the muggle. She was the Maleficent being, like in the movies where she's a fairy and, you know, the human king betrays her or whatever, or she's Merlin, or she's whatever you want to call the magical one, and he was the normal one. She taught him how to do this stuff. He went on to be the face, and she went behind him to be the woman behind the man, who is also the man behind the man. Apparently, she was also a mom. Does it make more sense to you now? This guy was also born of royal blood, hence why Mother Mary was so pristine and virgin and royal bloodline and all of this, because he was also a true and royal blood. So was she. She came from the Amazonians, which were originally even before the Atlantean race. The Atlantean race consisted of people from the Amazonian societies that started the Atlantean society after the Amazonian societies ended. So you have Atlantis, and then before that is Lemuria, and then before that is, I don't know, and then you got dinosaurs, Dino Meow, okay? Now, this place went kablooey, boom. This place, who knows what happened to it, and this place, like Starbucks, we're just going to call it Starbucks, okay? This place was started by the remnants of this place. This place was started by the remnants of this place. This place was started by the remnants of this place. And this place was started by the remnants of this place. People and dino meows walked together. There was a society back then, a civilization of godlike beings. Before this fuddy-duddy showed up and split the genetics in half and made his own species of male and female, well, the Elohim did, and then they blamed the demiurge, who was actually her child. I know it gets confusing, but it'll make sense to you because you already know this is true. So when they made the split, when this guy showed up, when they showed up to frame this guy, which is why this guy went bipolar and schizo, it was because they framed him and instigated him, and a lot of people accused him, and he went nuts. And he was also a she because she was also a he, and it's a process of parthenogenesis, which is what the Aeon Sophia, whatever, did when she gave birth to the demiurge without this dude's assistance. This dude is also the incarnation of what John Lamb calls Thelete, and she is Sophia. She's also Lucifer and Jesus. He is Arthur and the king of Edessa, the Essenes, and the Nazarene. She went off to be Merlin and went off to Avalon after the crucifixion and everything else that happened in the, I think it was the 1800s or something along those years, when they finally, he stopped, he was too wounded and went off to Avalon with Mary, Esther, and Orsanue. And then they went to Avalon, and then that's where the story disappears. Avalon means the first in Farsi, which Farsi is a descendant language of Aryan. Aryan is what Iran is now, hence why there's all the wars going on in the Middle East, because this country is one of the remnants of the people from this country who were known as the Tuatha De Danann, the original people of planet Earth. When the Matrix first activated, these peeps came in first. They walked along all the reptilians and all the other species in a utopian world. When the normal cataclysms that happen every 25,000 years occurred, this society went into this place, which resulted in the Amazons. From there, they went on into there, which was a society of the goddess people, an entire planet basically living to restore the planet into what it was, utilizing magic, the law of attraction, blah blah blah. There were no borders, no kingdoms, no empires, nothing. Again, another 25,000 years happened. Then Lemuria occurred with the remainder remnants of these people. By this time, this being, known as Mary Magdalene, has been around from here. Before, she was known as Ma'ari. You can research her in the Basque. Okay? And her husband was Shugar, Suugar, which is this guy, who is known as a serpent, a fiery serpent, who is also known as the Demiurge. Family with baby Demi, who wasn't a bad person. Demi was actually really nice. And they went from here to Lemuria. They started that civilization, which lasted another 25,000 years. Mind you, they are still alive, okay? Because time is irrelevant and decay only happens when you consume decay. So from there, this is where these noobs, the Elohim, show up, and they're like, oh look, a planet full of pink snake people who are bi-gender, and they have all this amazing power, and the planet itself is alive and connected to this being, and the sun is connected to this being, and the moon is connected to the Demiurge. So why don't we take this entire family tree trio and destroy everything here, wait for the next cataclysm, infiltrate the next society with more genetic off-breeds and clones and copies of these beings who are pure, perfect, and divine, to make more muggles. And then this society got corrupted by what you know as the Illuminati, which is a front. It is not the actual enemy. These beings were there to illuminate the nations that arose during Atlantis, because there was a massive amount of bad stuff that happened. So they were there to help illuminate the nations. They got infiltrated because when you want to destroy a society, you go for the education. You bring misinformation, you split them apart, you separate them, just like they did with the gender. And once these beings were messed with, then this society got all destroyed. They created terrible things. And voila, you have modern noobness. The idiocy we call our modern society. Now, modern society, you notice how there's druids and pagans and so on and so forth. They are all remnants of the original illuminated nations. The Masonics, the Freemasons, all of this, they're all remnants of this and this. Okay? So the real enemy is you. Your consciousness and your conscious choice to constantly pray to a God outside of you, which gives them power. That's all it is. This is why in this matrix you have governments. They are there to govern the mental states, to govern your mind, so that you constantly give power to this while you think you're giving it to this, when this being itself is imprisoned and basically scapegoated to be a shill or a cover or a front man for source, while the real avatar of the planet, the logos, the real original goddess, the being that connected with the planet first, is erased from history, and the one who knew about it is silenced and wiped out and removed, and then her child is made into the enemy. And then their entire lineage is turned into Middle Eastern monsters. So that all you know are blonde, blue, tall beings. And you glorify them. So, was Jesus Christ real? Yes. Was Mary Magdalene real? Yes. They were the same person. Was there an actual Jesus Christ and a separate being known as Mary Magdalene who was also Jesus Christ? Yes. The man that was with the woman man was Owen or Urza, which also means Ursa, the bear. Urza in Farsi means man. Man in Farsi means I am. So when they're saying I am the Son of Man, they're saying I am the Son of I am. The Self, the Source, the God mind. Self-created. Born of no father, born of no mother. I am my own father, I am my own mother. AKA the demiurge, parthenogenesis. I am my own mother, I am my own father. This is your history. Which is why Amazons have disappeared from history, which is why the Assyrians, which are still part of the Aryans and the Tuatha De Danann and the remnants of the Amazons, which went to Egypt, by the way, and the Egyptians were the grandparents. Queen Cleopatra and Arsinoe were the grandparents of this guy, and Mary and Mother Mary was their niece or daughter, one of those. And Magdalene was also part of those tribes, like part of that pharaohhood. Queen Arsinoe was, or Pharaoh Arsinoe, was one of the most prominent leaders in history. She invented a lot of things, including paper and writing and agriculture and all sorts of leadership society and plumbing and pipes and all sorts of things to help society after all of this disaster happened because of them. But they wiped that history out and made you think that some other person did it. Just like Ptolemy and Arsinoe. Ptolemy took most of the credit for what Arsinoe did, because the men were glorified and the females were downplayed. So the females played along, because as long as the female is downplayed, she has more power. When the female is in the spotlight, the female must continuously do things to remain in the spotlight, so the male has the power. When the male is in the spotlight, the female can do everything it can do to give the male more power and to stabilize the foundations. It's a complete smoke and mirrors trick. You think the divine masculine was wounded? No, the divine feminine and the masculine have been fine all along. This has all been a message for you to get back to source and neutrality. It has nothing to do with masculine or feminine. It has nothing to do with you helping yourself or, a journey of enlightenment. No, it's none of those things. It's just so you can go back to neutral. Because if we tip the scales towards negative, then you got to go towards positive. If they're tipped towards positive, you got to go back towards negative. And somewhere in the middle, you have neutral. Which is why this symbol existed. If I can draw it correctly. Right. Whatever, you know what I'm trying to draw. The swastika? Oh my god, I'm so terrible at it. This symbol was part of the nations, the four elements, the balance of everything coming together, the symbol of life coming from the four corners of existence, the four tribes of the world, the four cataclysms, the 100,000 years that this matrix has been running, this most recent time. I hope this sinks in for you, and I truly hope that you go and research this for yourself. And I'm going to give you some names that you can look up right now. Where is this? I'm just going to put it on the page for you, actually, here. Ralph, Ellis, Jason, Reza, Georgiani, and Robert Sepper. Sepper means spear, by the way. The light that is. These people speak truth to you. Go research them. I hope you have a lovely, lovely day. Bye.